How's it going, guys? Gast here, and this is my analysis for the Fire Emblem Three Houses E3 trailer. I've gone through the entire thing and I've put my thoughts down on paper here. A lot of it's speculation, a lot of it is things that might not be true or probably are untrue or just kind of guesses based on what we already know about the game. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Maybe you'll learn something, or maybe something will kind of get brought to light that you might not have thought of, and that's really the entire point of this. It's not really me trying to say, oh, I know what's going on, because we don't really do unless you read the leaks, which I didn't do. So this is kind of just me speculating and doing my best to see how everything ties itself together and my general thought process on getting there. So hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started.
Let's all agree to meet back at the monastery exactly 5 years from today.
Like a class reunion?
You will come, won't you?
The first quote is from before the time skip, where a promise was made at the monastery 5 years from today. They seem to be quite close friends right now, so I'm guessing the quote is said midway or later in Gen 1, especially since the head of the three houses have a good relationship with Byleth right now, so clearly time has passed when this was mentioned instead of just before when they first met on the 27th day of the 4th month.
Years ago, we fought here as classmates.
Then we cut to a quote that says, years ago we fought as classmates. Background, this is Edelgard, and she is now the apparent empress of Adrestia, and is now tied with the Church of Seiros directly, as is required since the Adrestian Empire and the Church are so very connected. The background seems to be forested with kind of smoldering smoke everywhere, and they're in a forest, which is also the same setting as where Claude and Dimitri are.
As big class reunions go, this one's gotta be the worst in history.
Claude then says, as big class reunions go, this has got to be the worst in history. He says this as there's smoke smoldering around and there are Leicester soldier corpses kind of lying around within this fire.
What should we do, Teach?
What should we do, Teach is a quote that I think is taken out of context and doesn't really fall with the rest of the theme of this cutscene. So I'm thinking that this might just be different quotes cut together, but the cutscene with Edelgard and Claude in specific are probably tied to the same one, because when Claude says this, it simply cuts to a scene with Byleth in a similar setting, but there's no smoke in the background. So I don't think this happens in the same place, and I don't think what should we do, Teach follows this sequence of dialogue that happens between Edelgard and Claude. And in this scene with Byleth, his hair has turned light green, and he has the bone chainsword that once belonged to Nemesis. Interestingly, this hair color is that of Seiros, but the weapon is her enemy's, which is Nemesis again. And my question is this an indication that Byleth is pulling some sort of Deirdre type thing, where she has both like Naga and Loftus blood inside of her, which is like the good and the bad, and Byleth is this sort of hybrid person with like two bloods, where he shares some hair color similar to Seiros, but the weapon he uses is that of Nemesis. You have that kind of duality there. But the sword doesn't seem to be powered up. It's missing the emblem, but later we do get to see the sword get powered up and charged and all glowy.
Kill every last one of them!
The next scene is with Dimitri, 5 years later, ordering his knights to kill every last one of them. I'm assuming that this is happening all at the same time. Dimitri has now possession of a legendary lance from Bladed, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, of the 10 Greats. Perhaps as a ruler of the Kingdom of Fergus, he gains the right to use this weapon. The difference, unlike Byleth, is that he has the crest inserted in his weapon. Same with Claude's. And then we have a text on screen that says, as dawn beckons, the flames of war rise. And then we see the same wintry setting that sees the Kingdom of Fergus and the Leicester Alliance troops getting ravaged by fireballs falling from the sky. But the Church of Seiros is nowhere to be found, nor the Adrestian Empire, and unsurprisingly, Edelgard isn't really here either, caught in the flash. But instead of sort of like meteors falling down, it's like this circle of fire with a sword that looks to be in the center of it. Is this sword the same one used by Seiros back in the Great War? Because from a distance and from a bird's eye view, it looks like that. And if so, perhaps the Empire was somehow behind this attack, since the only armies that get attacked or assaulted by this is Claude's and Dimitri's. Now, we do know from this sword that Edelgard does end up using this blade as well, so if this happens to be the same thing, then there is a connection to the church with this attack. We have this potential sword in the middle of all this, Adrestia's history of having really good magic proficiency, and we have Hubert's ruthless tactics for Edelgard. So maybe this was actually Hubert's idea to bring these two armies together and maybe set them up. Like, there was kind of a joke that Hubert did have an edge or an evil look to him, so maybe he has that edge to really pull some crazy stuff for Edelgard. We don't really know.
Still, we have no choice but to eliminate those who cling to unreasonable ideas of justice.
We then cut to a falcon and then into Edelgard once again saying, still, we have no choice but to eliminate those who cling to unreasonable ideas of justice. The montage of cutscenes is quick here, but it goes from Edelgard at the Dawn of War cutscene to then a separate cutscene with Byleth's glowing sword, but without his hair change, which indicates to me that he's still in the Officers' Academy, or maybe this is in the Garreg Mach Monastery itself. Maybe still figuring out his time powers or figuring out the sword. He's fighting this Plague Doctor mask guy, but this time this mask guy is conjuring some kind of spell. Now this guy seems to be just another mage. This look seems to be the evil mask generic mage looking guy who shows up in another cutscene as well and in some gameplay footage. At first, I thought this was some kind of time traveling thing going on, but this mage seems to be using some sort of protection spell against Byleth's sword as the sword is crashing against it. The color of the barrier is bluish purple, which might be a sign that it has to do with time, or maybe it's just the color of defending yourself with a spell. Not really sure. Maybe this guy is entirely irrelevant, and this is just happens to be a cutscene. Maybe the monastery is getting infiltrated by some bad guys. We do know that the Flame Emperor kind of floats around the monastery and the Officers' Academy. Same thing with the Reaper Knight, so maybe those guys are connected, but, you know, you can't really say.
To eliminate those who cling to unreasonable ideas of justice.
The next cutscene seems to be from another look from the first battle between Nemesis and Seiros. We see Pegasus Knights in the sky and infantry soldiers running towards a red glowy light with a white flash that looks like a whip kind of cutting through it. Perhaps this is a bird's eye view of Nemesis fighting ground soldiers from the first trailer, but this time, from this perspective, we see that there are two other glowy red balls of light with similar armies chasing down on it. It's my suspicion that Nemesis's sword and the other legendary weapons are somehow connected together. This red glow is a visual that we see from Claude's bow too, and he's the descendant of Regan, who is one of the 10 Greats. So maybe in this war, we have Nemesis, Regan's weapon user, or Regan himself, and Bladed's weapon. I really don't know how to pronounce this name. I'm just going to say Bladed. I'm sorry if I'm bastardizing this pronunciation, but I don't know what this is. But anyway, maybe there are other weapon users all fighting the Church of Seiros in this battle, since there are 3 glowy balls instead of 1. And the only time we ever see this red glow is with these legendary weapons. So maybe, you know, whoever the 10 Greats were, or, you know, whoever was with Nemesis fighting this war was kind of on his side. Maybe there's a lot of kind of ancient soldiers who didn't like the church and they all worked together to bring it down. Not really sure. The reason why I think it's maybe Regan's and Bladed is because while Edelgard has her ancient own bone axe thing, it's not even present in the trailer. It's only in her official art. And in fact, the only weapon that we see Edelgard with is Seiros' sword that she's used in this war itself.
We have no choice but to eliminate those who cling to unreasonable ideas of justice.
Next up is a cutscene with Edelgard and Dimitri as students in a ballroom setting dancing together, with Edelgard's cling to unreasonable ideas of justice narrating the rest of the scene. Perhaps it's a foreshadow. Is Dimitri the one who deep down hates the church? Sees the strong church trampling over the weak kind of people and whatnot? They are friends now, but maybe Edelgard's authority with the Church of Seiros and the Empire is completely at odds with what happens with Dimitri and maybe the Kingdom of Fergus. At 45 seconds, it is kind of a weird angle. It's like it's mirrored almost, but Edelgard's sleeve is on Dimitri's shoulder, and you can see his shoulder to the left and her hand to the right. I don't know if they were romantic partners, maybe they were at one point, maybe they are 2 extremely powerful close friends in the Officers' Academy. Now, following this cutscene and the end of the quote, we see Rhea happily looking at the viewer on a sunny horizon, quickly juxtaposed by Dimitri with mud or dirt or even blood splattered on his face. Now, this is a young Dimitri. Perhaps the will of the church really did a number on him, causing him to spin out of control for the 5 years up until the fiery reunion. That sequence of scenes can't be unintentional. especially considering the Dimitri line that says, "Someone must put a stop to this cycle of the strong trampling the weak."
Someone must put a stop to this cycle of the strong trampling the weak.
During this quote, a shadowy figure is holding a woman up and presumably killing her. Is this quote-unquote evil Dimitri killing some innocent woman? There was an orange-haired woman in the February trailer towards the end too, who looked pretty close to dying if you ask me. Then there's a cut to a fireball destroying a castle town. Not sure honestly what this could be. Maybe the destruction of this town is what causes Dimitri to go bananas too. It still plays through his narration. Is this the quote-unquote strong, magically proficient Adrestians and the church people toppling down a rebellion that perhaps belonged to one of Dimitri's territories? We time skip to Seiros and Nemesis fighting again. Seiros has got some strength taking on this guy, and they seem pretty even, but right after, Seiros, or someone, gets all dragoned up and gets some lizard eyes. Maybe that's what it takes to defeat Nemesis in the first place. The mural presented to us from way back in the beginning sees Seiros over a big dragon with the Seiros emblem on its forehead. Now this is perhaps a stretch, but maybe the dragon and Seiros aren't different at all, and it's just Seiros transforming to win the battle. I mean, maybe it's not, but it looks like someone turning into a dragon, and the only one that can do that we know of is potentially Seiros, who is literally a goddess, which, you know, Naga, Milla, and Duma can take human forms, of course, and they are considered gods in their universes. Sothis and Rhea, although I'm not sure that this is Rhea, and Sothis seems to just be existing in Byleth's mind as far as we know. So who knows, maybe it is Seiros turning into a dragon. There's a very short scene of the Death Knight saying, "Humph."
So the Fellstone consumes even the darkness itself.
And then we have an evil looking guy saying, "The fell stone consumes even darkness itself," in a tone that implies surprise. Oh boy, we're getting some Magville inspiration up in here. Then the divine dragon rises with Seiros' crest on its head in all its bony glory. In the mural there are several dragons around. Is this dragon rising from the ground or smashing onto it? The reason why I ask whether it's one or the other is because we later see Nemesis being revived and breaking through a coffin. Maybe something similar is happening here, with this evil guy in the fell stone resurrecting some kind of dragon for his own doing. The next scene is a white-haired villain-looking guy performing a ritual on the ground. I tried to look closely at the runic circle around him, but I can't recognize any crest it could look like. The only indication that connects to a crest is the guy's earring, and maybe it's one of the faded out crests we know nothing about. Or maybe it's another thing altogether separate from the crests, and maybe I'm just overthinking it at this point.
We have the strength to scale the walls between us, to reach out our hands in friendship so we can open our true hearts to one another. That's how we win!
We have Claude then talking about, we have the strength to scale the walls between us. Claude says this narrating over a sequence of scenes mainly with him shooting his magic arrow into the sky, telling the presumed enemy that despite these barriers and conflicts brewing, friendship will unite the three houses together and win in the end. Many cutscenes play through this, like we see Nemesis in the exact same clip from the previous trailer, and then a boot stomping over the Flame Emperor's mask. Now, while we don't know who this boot belongs to, I believe it might be Dimitri's from Gen 1. It looks the same if you look at their official art, where the boot is silver and so is Dimitri's. And also, this cutscene is followed by Dimitri and Claude looking at each other, with Claude reaching out to him. Maybe Dimitri defeats the Flame Emperor and unmasks him, and maybe whatever he discovers sets him off to a massive, intense change of personality. Just a guess. But this part of the trailer is Claude's time to shine. And he seems to be the most neutral good guy here. I'm getting really solid Eliwood vibes here, not only from the whole friendship speech, but also from the Leicester-Lishan kind of alliance, the Lishan League, the Leicester Alliance, a bunch of feudal lords coming together. After that scene ends, a coffin chained up with a red orb breaks apart. A closer look shows that this is actually Nemesis's hands breaking through it, grunting as he tears the chains apart. Yikes. Whoever set this up must really have needed help. There is black smoke that emanates through the coffin as well. We haven't seen black smoke since the February trailer when some evil guy's hands was black and smoky. Then seconds later with someone approaching Byleth at the very end of that trailer, where Byleth had the bone sword in his hand, looking up. Is that a coincidence? Is this scene from the trailer the opposing perspective of that same cutscene in the previous one? Who knows? Maybe the Fell Stone is resurrecting all these guys. I'm not sure. Maybe the Fell Stone is the source of Nemesis's power altogether. That could track, right?
Teacher.
Next we have Edelgard leaning down, with the Sero's sword in hand instead of her axe, in what seems to be a fight against the light green-haired Byleth. Is this a clash that happens if you don't choose the Black Eagles in the beginning? She sounds out of breath too. This next part, I don't know if it's intentional, but Edelgard's hair looks way more green, almost like Seros' or Ria's in this light. Edelgard's hair is this ivory gray whitish color, greeny type thing, so maybe it's just the light causing it to look this saturated. But compared to Byleth, whose hair has already turned that color, maybe it's sort of a visual metaphor of Byleth versus the church, where we have Edelgard representing the church, with Byleth representing someone who has sort of part of the church and Nemesis's blood put together. That's just a suspicion of mine.
Teacher.
Both sides of time are revealed to you. What shall you do?
Lastly, Sothis says, both sides of time are revealed to you. What shall you do? Now that is a loaded question, and I have no idea. Who knows? We know that Byleth gets time powers where he can undo the present by going back in time, but how much power does Byleth get to have? How far back in time can he go? People suspect that this means Byleth has the chance to undo Dimitri's tragic incident, but time travel in Fire Emblem has always been kind of a giant can of worms, so who knows to what extent Sothis and Byleth have over time and stuff. Anyways, that's the trailer, folks. I know I speculated a lot here, but I really enjoyed breaking this trailer down as much as I could. If you have anything to add, go ahead and mention it down below. I have not been intrigued by a trailer, by Fire Emblem no less, in probably a long time. I guess since Echoes, which, I mean, was the last game, so I don't know how much that matters. There seem to be like 60 million conflicts and subplots going on at the same time, and this is shaping up to be a game for the series for the ages. Next up, my Treehouse gameplay analysis. That'll do it for me, folks. If you guys like this video, please leave a like and comment, and do subscribe if this is your first video of mine that you've ever seen. I also do have a Patreon with some pretty fun perks, so if you enjoy interaction and getting to know me a little bit more on a personal side, go ahead and check it out, see if you like it, and if you want to support, that'd be great. Anyways, folks, that'll do it for me. I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow or the next day. With that being said, take care, and deuces.